Hey, and welcome to Trail Trials, the video review section of iRunFar.com. My name is Travis Lyles, and in this video we're going to take a look at the New Balance MT 1210 Leadville. The New Balance MT 1210, or the Leadville, is New Balance's first shoe that they've really positioned as an ultra running shoe. You see it in their marketing and online. You also see it just in the name of the shoe, the Leadville, that this is really positioned to be an ultra running shoe. And how this differs from what New Balance has done over the last several years is this is not a minimal shoe. This is a shoe for the masses. But what we see are a lot of great features that have been taken from that minimal line, so it's not just a road shoe with some beefed up tread. It really is a shoe that they've taken some time and some effort to build a shoe that is trail running specific, while taking some of that heritage of that minimal line and applying it to a shoe that is definitely in that middle of the road in terms of cushioning and support and those sort of things. So to give you some quick specs, the Leadville is a 10.3 ounce shoe with an 8mm drop and a slight bit of pronation control. So with that said, let's get up close and personal and see what we think about the MT 1210 Leadville from New Balance. Let's start off by looking at the outsole of the Leadville. So we can see from some branding on the side of the shoe as well as the bottom, this is a Vibram outsole. That means we've got some durable rubber that's really going to hang around for a while, just as the reputation of Vibram. These shoes have forward-facing and reverse-facing lugs. We can see the forward-facing lugs being at the front, so that going uphill, giving us traction, and then as we transition to the midfoot and back to the heel, we move to a rear-facing lug so that we can brake going downhill and have traction, and then a full-on heel brake as we go all the way to the outer back part of the heel, where generally we would sit back on if we're trying to avoid sliding. In the middle of the shoe, we have a very consistent sort of triangle or yield sign, I guess a skewed yield sign type of lug all the way across the bottom. I found these to clear out mud relatively easily, and I think a lot of that has to do with our tread depth. So we don't have an overly aggressive trail sole. We have a general purpose. If it's really, really muddy, these aren't going to do as well as something that's got a large, oversized lug or a spike, but these are going to do great in terms of overall general trail running and be able to provide traction on a wide variety of surfaces. If we look in here, we've got a cutout that exposes some of our trail plate. This trail plate is semi-solid, so I can push my finger in and I can get my fingernail to push into that material, so it's not a hard plastic. But overall, we definitely don't have a really twisty and flexible type of shoe. Over time, these will become and break down and be more flexible, but it's a relatively stiffer shoe, I think, compared to probably what we've all seen in the last several years in the Minimus line and in the New Balance trail shoes. But overall, a nice outsole that's going to provide a package that is going to be very good across lots of different conditions. Low lugs that tended to clear mud well, and we've had a really rainy season here in my neck of the woods. Next up, we'll transition to the midsole. And we have two types of foam here that we'll talk about on the outside portion of the shoe. We have what's known as the N2 foam, and the N2 foam is made to be a little more durable, not quite as spongy as some of the foam that's used on the road shoes for New Balance. So the N2 is described as a lower profile type of foam, which is of course fitting for trail running. We don't want to step on a rock or a root or something and have a really, thick foam or a road shoe type of foam there that A, isn't going to hold up very long, and B, we don't get a lot of responsiveness from the trail. So they use a slightly denser foam in this N2 foam, and that is used all the way in the entire midsole. We also have something called this Revlite, which is another type of foam that's slightly squishier. So this is a little more dense than, say, this black foam here. This is on the outside of the shoe, so when you're striking and hitting to the outside, providing just a little bit more cushion for that type of strike. And you can see that exists from the heel all the way up into the front of the shoe, so on that outer side of the shoe. As we transition around the back and move our way into our inner view here, what we can see is that we have a post. We have our N2 foam continuing, and then this dark gray foam. And this dark gray foam, just by pushing on it, you can feel it's slightly more dense than the red foam or our N2 foam. And what I like about this post is that it's not a post that's going to be really obtrusive. If you're a neutral runner, you may not ever even use it. But if you are someone like me, who maybe later on in a race, or if you've got a lot of miles in during the week, form might start to slip a little bit. This is helpful because it's not something that's there and always affecting your stride. It's there kind of when you need it. So because it's farther back in here, in the heel, it doesn't extend up into the arch area, you've got a post that is probably more relatable to a fatigue post than it would be a true pronation type of device. So that's there for when your form gets a little bit rough, but I like it because it's not overly aggressive, so you know my form can break down and I can have some type of support, but I don't have like a road shoe type post that's going to push my foot back and potentially cause an issue when I'm out trail running, sprained ankle, that type of a thing. So overall, an 8mm drop shoe, which tends to be a good sweet spot, I think, for a lot of trail runners out there, and having a little bit of stability is going to make this shoe more accessible to a lot of folks than, say, some of the Minimus or the other types of New Balance shoes that are out there. Next up, let's transition to the upper. And the upper is one of those places where you can see some of that feedback that they've gotten from their ultra running team on cutting down and getting a little more minimal on the upper than, say, some of their previous trail models. So let's start off by talking about the tip of the shoe. We have a toe bumper here right at the very apex, so it's not overly hard rubber, but it is there. It's going to add some protection. As we move to the sides, we'll have a leather, sort of a slick type of leather here, and what's interesting here is this same material is all over the shoe, but up here at the front there's even another layer of kind of a plasticky or I don't know, rubbery type of overlay, and I would say that's probably for when you're running in wet grass and those sort of things. It's not going to soak into that, so that's going to be more water repellent. As we move around the back, we can see that we start to move away from that suede type material and we move into a mesh. Now this mesh overlays, if you really look close and in tight, sort of that waffle pattern that we've seen a lot on the New Balance Minimus type shoes, where it's a waffle pattern with mesh overlaid. We have a very similar style here, smaller waffle and a little bit thinner gauge mesh. So that's going to provide structural support of the shoe and keep debris out. And I did find that this did a fine job of keeping out debris. As we move across the rest of the shoe, we see a little bit of this laminated silver or chrome colored support. And this is what's known as phantom fit. So versus taking overlays, placing those all over the shoe, they've done a lightweight mask that's a laminate that's on top of this fabric. So there's not stitching on here, which is something you'll notice really throughout the shoe. Not a lot of stitching on this shoe, which is great for avoiding hot spots. And we have that laminate on both sides, adding some structure, and we can see that somewhat goes up into the laces. So when the laces are pulled, that sort of creates this tension across this mask, or this phantom fit, that's going to provide a much better and more secure fit. As we move our way around the sides, we can see our top shoes anchor to this piece of felt or overlay that exists on both sides. That's again going to help cinch that up when we pull that lace tight. It's going to add an anchor point for us to be able to get a good cinch in the heel. As we move to the heel, we can see that while there is a bit of structure in the heel, and in terms of a heel cup, it's pretty lightweight. And in fact, there's not a lot to it. It collapses. But if you feel in there, there's a piece of plastic or something in there that's helping keep the shape of that heel. And we have a nice padded heel collar here that for me was really not as locked down as I'd like it to be. So you can see that with these laces, I've laced all the way up, and I've done that heel lock type lace. This shoe did not really hold my heel as good as I would have hoped, but I've got a narrow heel, so someone with a more normal heel may not have a problem with that. So me just a FYI, it is a bit of a wider foot in the back. So if you need that, it's there. If you're more narrow heel, you may have to futz around with the lacing like I did. Speaking of the lacing, we have very standard lacing here that I talked about being able to anchor the foot in. And then lastly, we come to probably my only real ding on this shoe, and that is the tongue. And the one great thing about the tongue is it is gusseted all the way up. So in terms of being able to keep out debris, we're all the way up to this top eyelet where that tongue is at. So what's nice is it creates a nice fit, your foot fits in there nicely, and it has a good slipperish type feel when you put your foot in here. The downside, of course, being that heel, and what sort of compounds that problem for me is that this tongue is not very tall. So you can see with the lacing style that I used, I'm almost at the top in terms of the laces, and because it doesn't have a lot to it, I found sometimes when I was going downhill, my laces would slide back behind the tongue, unfortunately, and add a little bit of pressure. But again, that's an issue that's specific to me, so if you don't have that type of issue, could obviously be a really great fit. Lastly, we've got a removable insole. This used to say the Leadville and have a bit of a picture just like what we have on the tongue here with the mountain range. I've worn that off, but you do have a removable insole that you can take out and use orthotics if you'd like. In closing, the Leadville really brings something new to the New Balance line that hasn't been there for a while, and that is a real trail running shoe that's specifically designed for trail running. So they haven't mocked up a road running shoe with some trail features. This is its own beast, if you will. Good tread, average type tread with various position lugs. In that mid-weight range at 10.3 ounces, we have a much lower than normal in terms of road shoe type of drop at 8 millimeters. They add a little bit of pronation control in here without going overboard and making it unsafe, and they really have reduced a lot of the uppers and overlays by doing some of this netting. My only ding on it is the tongue is not quite tall enough if you're going to be using these back laces, because maybe you've got a narrow heel and you need to cinch that up. I had a problem with that, but if you're someone that's got a wider heel, maybe not an issue. So with that said, any comments or questions, please leave those below the video. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next time.